Good morning. It is Thursday, January 19th, and a warm welcome for President-elect Trump in our nation's capital, where finishing touches are underway for his big day. But as a growing list of Democrats try to divide and conquer, the looming question is, can Mr. Trump bring this country together? We are live in Washington, D.C. with expert analysis.
And fireworks as Democratic attack dogs unleash blistering attacks on Mr. Trump's cabinet picks.
Did you buy the stock, and then did you introduce a bill that would be helpful to the companies you just bought stock in?
We are not a compassionate society. You agree that global warming is a hoax?
So who's in the hot seat next? The announcement today that could complete his cabinet.
And Wax and Mane, a brand new statue honoring Donald Trump, just unveiled. Can you guess what the hair is made of? You're going to have to wait for this one. Fox and Friends First starts right now.
President of the United States. Yes. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Thursday. I'm Heather Childers.
Good morning, Dolby. I'm Abby Huntsman. Thanks for starting your Thursday with us. And we do want to begin here one day before President-elect Donald Trump is sworn in as our 45th president. He is, of course, hard at work putting the finishing touches on his inauguration speech.
Also hard at work, Democrats. The list boycotting the inauguration, nearly 70, as they stick with their mission to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power.
Leland Vittert is live for us in Washington, D.C. with the very latest. Leland, this is like more than a third of the House Democrats, right?
Yeah, exactly, Abby and Heather, good morning to you. Not only in terms of the numbers, but also in terms of the symbolism. We haven't really seen this from a members of the House in a very long time, certainly not in these numbers. We are now just 31 hours till President-elect Trump becomes President Trump. Already street closures around D.C., just one of the hundreds of things on the checklist, not only from a security standpoint, but a crowd management standpoint, as so many are descending here on D.C. Across the city, there's no-scale fencing that's been put up, not only near the parade route, but other buildings as well to keep protesters out. You can see the finishing touches there on the Capitol where the inauguration will actually happen. Last night, there he is. Mr. Trump made a quick visit to D.C. for 2 dinners and then dropped by the Trump Hotel for a surprise visit. Reports indicate much of his inaugural address is written, but he didn't give away any hints when he tweeted a picture of himself working on it. This from his Twitter account: writing my inaugural address at the Winter White House in Mar-a-Lago 3 weeks ago. Looking forward to Friday. #inauguration. At least 68 Democrats from Congress won't be there, though, to see the speech.
What message would you send to Democrats to better demonstrate the peaceful transfer of power?
With respect to the inauguration, I'm not going to comment on those issues. All I know is I'm going to be there.
Well, the vice president-elect, shall we say, struck a slightly different tone.
He is determined to be president of all of the people of the United States. We respect the opinions of every American and their right to express their opinions. I hope those folks will turn an attentive ear to the President-elect's words in that inaugural address and give us a chance.
Well, we've been talking about it for a while, and today is the day that Mr. Trump arrives in D.C., this time on a U.S. military aircraft, and the inaugural preps begin, including a wreath laying at the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington this afternoon. Ladies, unclear what's on the president-elect's schedule for this evening before everything starts early tomorrow morning.
Well, busy few days to come.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exciting 2 days.
Exciting 2 days. Thank you, Leland.
Thanks.
Well, down to business. Mr. Trump expected to sign as many as 200 executive orders as soon as he takes the oath of office.
Well, I want to go to work. Monday is really the day that we start signing and working and making great deals for the country.
His philosophy is to level the playing field, get rid of all the law-making that Barack Obama did by his executive orders, level the playing field, ask Congress to change laws that need to be changed. Now, what he will do if Congress doesn't give him what he wants, I don't know.
Well, according to the incoming White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, Mr. Trump will sign 4 or 5 of those executive orders as soon as tomorrow.
Well, the cabinet could soon be complete. The president-elect expected to name former Georgia Governor Sonny Perdue as Agriculture Secretary today. The pick putting new pressure on Democrats to speed up confirmation hearings after a fierce grilling on Capitol Hill. Senior political correspondent Mike Emanuel has more.
4 hearings on Capitol Hill featuring President-elect Donald Trump's nominees to head Health and Human Services, the Environmental Protection Agency, to be the next ambassador to the UN, and to be Commerce Secretary. Democrats targeted HHS nominee Georgia Congressman Dr. Tom Price for his financial investments.
I'm just asking, did you buy the stock and then did you introduce a bill that would be helpful to the companies you just bought stock in?
The stock was bought by a broker who was making those decisions. I wasn't making those decisions.
These are your stock trades, though.
In Oklahoma, Attorney General Scott Pruitt's hearing to be the next EPA administrator. Pruitt told senators environmental regulations should not occur in an economic vacuum. Massachusetts Democrat Senator Ed Markey tried to drive a wedge between Pruitt and President-elect Trump.
Do you agree that global warming is a hoax?
I do not, Senator.
So Donald Trump is wrong?
I do not believe that climate change is a hoax.
Okay, that's important for the president to hear.
South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley raised concerns about the potential economic impact of the Paris Climate Agreement in her hearing to be the ambassador to the United Nations. Haley also issued a warning about aggressive behavior by Moscow.
I don't think that we can trust them. I think that we have to make sure that we try and see what we can get from them before we give to them.
Wilbur Ross, the nominee to be the next Commerce Secretary, focused a lot on international trade after the president-elect campaigned aggressively against the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
These nominees don't need Democratic support if Republicans stick together. While Democrats raise their concerns, there are no signs of Republicans splintering over these 4 nominees. On Capitol Hill, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
And in the hot seat today, former Texas Governor Rick Perry up for Energy Secretary, and former Goldman Sachs banker Steve Mnuchin up for Treasury Secretary.
And President Obama offering a word to the wise, the outgoing commander-in-chief revealing the advice he's passed on to President-elect Donald Trump. Take a listen.
And this is something I have told him, that this is a job of such magnitude that you can't do it by yourself. You are enormously reliant on a team. How you put a team together to make sure that they're getting you the best information and they are teeing up the options from which you will ultimately make decisions.
The president also added that it is good to have advisors and cabinet members with different opinions and viewpoints.
Well, Democrats not alone in the inauguration boycott as hundreds of thousands of protesters get ready to flood the streets of D.C. So how can President-elect Donald Trump bring the country together? Here with a fair and balanced debate, New York City GOP Councilman Joe Borelli and former Ohio State Senate Minority Leader Capri Cafaro. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.
So as we've mentioned at the top of the show this morning, about 1/3 of Democrats are skipping the inauguration, 34%. Capri, I'll start with you. Sure. How can they expect the nation to come together if our nation's leaders can't come together themselves?
I personally, if I were a member of Congress, I think it's a bad move. At the end of the day, come tomorrow in 31 hours, as we said at the top of the show, President-elect Trump will be President Trump, and these members of Congress will still be members of Congress, and they're going to have to work with President Trump in some way, shape, or form. It is each branch of government's obligation to govern for the best interests of the people of the United States of America, and I think it would behoove both the elected officials that are involved, as well as, more importantly, the people of the United States, if Democrats and Republicans, President Trump, and members of Congress focus on policy and governing rather than getting into these, mud fights that seemingly is happening.
Yeah, Joe, what do you think? I mean, it probably doesn't help necessarily when the current president of the United States, just yesterday says, I think we're going to be okay, and says, I can't speak to people not going. I can only say that I'll be there.
Right, and recall that he and Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid back in September and October were saying that we must all respect the outcome of the election as legitimate. Now suddenly they're not lecturing anyone today. But I think the best thing that Donald Trump could do, and really the members of his cabinet and Republicans at large, would be to simply ignore the 66 Democrats who are choosing to not come to the inauguration. If they don't want to come and rain on my parade, that's even better. What they're doing is really petty and meaningless. And if you need evidence of that, you have to remember that it took the media 4 days to even remember that John Lewis himself and others did the same thing 4 years ago. This is the one day where members of both parties in an entire 4-year presidential cycle, members of both parties come together, put the differences aside, and respect the peaceful transfer of power. This is, I think, the 55th inauguration we're having, and it's a disgrace that these members of Congress are not taking part.
Capri, do you think the response from the media would be the same if Republicans were doing this?
You know, it's hard to say. I mean, I think that certainly if the tables were turned and Hillary Clinton was elected president of the United States, or even if this happened in some kind of a large scale for President Obama.
You think they wouldn't show up?
Well, no, I think that the media probably would have, you know, cried bloody murder over it, to be honest. But, you know, I think that at the end of the day, the members of Congress do certainly have a right for, you know, peaceful protest. Do I think that it's good for the nation? No, I do not. I think that it's more important to govern and not be petty
and less
for the betterment of the nation.
Yeah, less important. What do you think, Capri, about all the celebrities that aren't coming?
Well, you know, I really don't care. You know, celebrities mean nothing to the governance of the nation. You know, I'm sure it'll be a wonderful event this week. And, you know, I guess there'll be a bunch of celebrities here during the protest over the weekend. So they'll still descend upon Washington.
And, Joe, finally, it's supposed to be about the people to begin with anyway, right?
Right, it's about the people. Donald Trump really should look at this as the first day of his 4-year relationship with the American public, and he should do everything he can to convince people why they should be on board the Trump train for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
He has the opportunity
Across
on Friday.
the board.
Let's see what he does.
All right. Thank you both for joining us this morning. An exciting couple days coming up. Thank you. So let's keep talking about this. What do you think President-elect Trump can and should do to bring the country together? Log on to Fox and Friends First Facebook page right after the show for a live debate. Hashtag Keep Talking.
On President-elect Trump's parade, some wet weather in the forecast for maybe tomorrow. Fox News senior meteorologist Janice Dean is live in Washington, D.C. with the Inauguration Day forecast. Maybe some rain, but also some warm temperatures. So the good and the bad.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go to the silver lining, which is the temperatures are going to be warm tomorrow in the swearing in around 48 degrees. But we are looking for rain in the forecast. Now, the average temperature around this time is 37 degrees, so we will take it. But as you can see, rain moving in tomorrow morning. I think actually we might get some sprinkles around 8 a.m. So take note if you're coming down here. And that's going to be continuous on and off throughout the day. And the parade looks like it's going to be rainy. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, in other news, we are talking about temperatures warmer than average across the southeastern U.S. We have this frontal boundary that's draped across the mid-Atlantic down towards Texas, and you can see where the temperatures are warmer than average. And then we have cooler temperatures north of that boundary. So places across the northern Rockies, the Northwest, we are dealing with a lot of snow and ice. Let's take a look at the radar the last 24 hours. The big story today for the U.S. is going to be the rain and snow over the west coast. We're talking about inches of rain and feet of snow, and even though they need it, it's beneficial. It's going to cause problems like flash flooding, rock slides, mudslides, and an avalanche threat. So that's what we're going to be watching. And of course, the weather here in D.C., the Capitol building is right behind me, about a mile behind me, ladies. And of course, the swearing in, the inauguration happening tomorrow on the steps of the Capitol building. Pretty exciting. Back to you.
Very exciting. All right, Janice Dean, thanks for that.
Don't look bad now. Thanks. Well, the time now is 12 minutes after the top of the hour. And unprecedented security as D.C. braces for Inauguration Day chaos after a terrifying arrest of the man who threatened to kill our president-elect and his connection to the Clintons.
Do you think Donald Trump is going to use profanity in his inaugural address? Do you think he's going to mock the disabled or women or minorities? Of course he's not.
Class ban. A teacher now refusing to let his fourth graders watch the inaugural address, and the parents, they're not happy about this.
Unreal. And shouldn't you be gone by now? The liberal celebrities who threatened to move. Remember that? If Trump won?
Has anyone left?
Yep. Well, they're now under fire for disrespecting. Look at that, Old Glory. Welcome back to Fox and Friends. First, a big-time Democratic donor with ties to the Clintons charged with this shocking death threat against the president-elect.
Yes, I'll be at the review stand at the inauguration, and I'm going to kill President Trump. President-elect Trump today. What are you going to do about it? Secret Service?
Dominic Papalo arrested after posting this threat to Twitter, also calling himself Jesus in the video. He belongs to a prominent Northeastern family with ties to the Clintons. Hillary Clinton spoke at his mother's funeral, in fact, after she died on one of the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center on 9/11. Papalo is now being held without bond.
Also, this an unprecedented show of security, nearly complete. A ring of metal fences sealing off the secure zone around Capitol Hill for Inauguration Day. More than 7,000 National Guard troops, along with 3,000 police officers, will be on hand tomorrow. One growing security concern, the tension building between inauguration spectators and the protesters, after reports that protesters have reserved 6 times more bus parking permits than Trump supporters.
I'm really excited. I'm really honored just to be able to be in something so important like this. Most people won't go to an inauguration in their life, let alone the most controversial one in history.
It's our role and the role of any people of conscience to try to disrupt this inauguration and have a massive showing of resistance on that day.
Oof. Nearly 1 million people are expected to be on the National Mall for tomorrow's swearing-in ceremony.
And more crowds expected to swarm Washington for the Million Women's March on Saturday. The so-called inclusive event now throwing yet another pro-life group to the curb. The leader of And Then There Were None claims that their stance on reproductive rights got them kicked off the list of partners for the march. And yesterday, you'll recall, we told you about the New Wave Feminist, another pro-life group told to stay home.
Well, here's your chance to get up close and personal with the 45th president. Madame Tussauds is unveiling brand new wax figures of Mr. Trump. The statue's taking 20 artists 6 months to create the statue. The hardest part, apparently his iconic mane. It is made out of yak hair and took 5 weeks to perfect. The artist inserting one strand at a time. Wow. The statues go on display in New York, Orlando, and London tomorrow.
Pretty creative.
Looks good, though, right?
Well, the time now is 19 minutes after the top of the hour, and George H.W. and Barbara Bush both hospitalized at this hour. Well, we just learned about their conditions and the former president's special message to the president-elect.
And it is lit. Our first look at the plot to smoke out Inauguration Day.
Optimum Note.
We're back with this story we continue to watch very closely. Former President George H.W. Bush moved to intensive care yesterday after being admitted to a Houston hospital over the weekend.
Yeah, and his wife, former First Lady Barbara Bush, also hospitalized. Jackie Ibanez is here now with the latest on their conditions. Jackie?
Good morning, Abby and Heather. The 92-year-old 41st President of the United States experiencing acute respiratory problems stemming from pneumonia. His office says doctors performed a procedure to protect and clear his airway. Mrs. Bush also hospitalized for fatigue and coughing, we're told. But just days before his initial hospitalization, Bush sent a letter to Mr. Trump apologizing for missing the inauguration, even joking about dying from the cold weather, saying, quote, "My doctor says if I sit outside in January, it likely will put me 6 feet under." Same with Barbara. So I guess we're stuck in Texas. But we will be with you and the country in spirit. Mr. Trump tweeting this, looking forward to a speedy recovery for George and Barbara Bush, both hospitalized. Thank you for your wonderful letter. Mr. Bush is in stable condition, but will be kept in ICU for observation. Thought that tweet was very nice from both of them.
They're so sweet.
You know, I hope they're both okay, for sure.
Yeah, hoping the best. And thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. Well, now let's switch to the economy and Job Killer, a stunning new report showing exactly how many jobs we're losing thanks to Obamacare.
Cheryl Casoni from our sister network, Fox Business, is here to explain. Cheryl, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, the American Action Forum has released this pretty stunning report saying that because of Obamacare, we have now lost 300,000 jobs, small business jobs, to be particular here. Also, there's a wage issue, $19 billion in lost wages. every year because of Obamacare. Now, they looked at companies that have between 20 and 99 employees. The biggest losses that we saw as far as wage garnishment, Florida, Ohio, Texas, and Pennsylvania lost wages, whether that is less hours that employees were able to work or their salaries or their jobs were just gone. But what this shows is that because of premiums and regulations, it's been a dire hit on small businesses. That was Obamacare. Of course, Donald Trump has promised to repeal and replace that law.
And now there's some numbers to prove it.
Yeah.
All right, well, President Obama trying to squeeze in a lot before he leaves office now. UN Climate Fund payment.
Oh, yeah. We just decided to give $500 million to that climate fund right before he left office. $500 million of taxpayer money. Now, what is interesting about this is that a lot of this money goes to other countries, programs in other countries. So this is American tax money going to other people for the issue of climate change. We should say that President Obama probably did this because Donald Trump has said, at least he said on the campaign trail, that he was going to cancel the Paris Climate Agreement, and that also money that was going around the world to global warming programs, he was going to get rid of that as well. So definitely a last-minute move by President Obama with this one.
Well, something else that President-elect Trump said on the campaign trail, that was he's going to make America great again, and there's a dating site that's going to make dating great again?
Yeah, so we actually, I told you about this a little while ago. This app launched last year, and it's a dating site for Trump. Singles, obviously, with the divisiveness that has come with this election, folks were having a hard time going on dates because if politics came up, well, date ending didn't go well. Anyway, it was launched back in June. I told you about it then. 24,000 members since then. But since the election, it's gotten 5,000 new members. And again, the site is to deal with taking that divisive political discussion out of your dating life. Back to you.
Mr. Trump should officiate any weddings that happen.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thanks, Cheryl. Time is now 27 after the hour, and it was one of his most coveted campaign promises.
We're going to Washington, D.C. to drain the swamp. Absolutely.
Well, Mr. Trump already has a plan to make good on his word, but will it work?
And a fair and balanced debate live from Washington, D.C. as our live coverage of the historic inauguration continues up next.
Marriott Marquis in Washington, D.C. has a $75,000 inauguration package that includes 24-hour champagne service. People said, who needs to drink through the whole inauguration? Let's go.
A live look there at Washington, D.C., where it all goes down tomorrow. It'll be official.
Yes.
Donald Trump as the 45th president of the United States. Good morning to all of you. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Thursday morning. I'm Abby Hunt.
And I'm Heather Childers. It is now 5:30 the top of the hour, one day before President-elect Donald Trump is sworn in as our 45th president. He is hard at work, putting the finishing touches on his inauguration speech.
Also hard at work, the Democrats. The list boycotting the inauguration near 70 now as they stick with their mission to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power.
Leland Vittert is live for us in Washington, D.C. with the very latest this morning. Leland, over a third of Democrats not attending.
Exactly, and we'll get to what President Obama has to say about that in just a minute. We're 30½ hours till President-elect Trump becomes President Trump. Already street closures around D.C., just one of the hundreds of things on the checklist. Last night, Mr. Trump made a quick visit to D.C. for 2 dinners and then popped by the Trump Hotel for a surprise visit, much to the welcome, you might say, of his adoring fans. He's also tweeted out pictures of him working on his inaugural address. It is written, we hear, but he did not give away any hints when he tweeted out that picture about what might be in it. At least 68 Democrats from Congress, though, will not be there to see the speech.
What message would you send to Democrats to better demonstrate the peaceful transfer of power?
With respect to the inauguration, I'm not going to comment on those issues. All I know is I'm going to be there.
Now, the vice president-elect had just a little more to say on that.
He is determined to be president of all of the people of the United States. We respect the opinions of every American and their right to express their opinions. I hope those folks will turn an attentive ear to the president-elect's words in that inaugural address and give us a chance.
Mr. Trump wakes up this morning in New York at Trump Tower and then comes to D.C., this time on a U.S. military aircraft. First on the agenda, a wreath laying at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington Cemetery before getting ready for the big day tomorrow. Ladies?
All right, 30 and 1/2 hours to go.
A lot of work
Gotta be
still
exact.
to be done.
You got to be exact. Thank you, Leland.
Thanks, Leland.
Well, President-elect Donald Trump already making plans to deliver on one of his campaign promises. Listen.
We're going to Washington, D.C. to drain the swamp.
Well, insiders revealing that massive spending and federal job cuts will be part of the first steps. Our political panel is back to weigh in. Welcome New York City GOP Councilman Joe Borelli and former Ohio State Senate Democrat Minority Leader Capri Cafaro. Good morning to both of you.
Hey.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here. So, Joe, I'll start with you. I mean, I think we all can agree that lessening the spending in Washington is a great thing. The next question, though, how do you do it? How do you pay for it?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. And then this plan from Donald Trump really is answering a broader question of how will the new administration pay for some of Donald Trump's broader policy goals, like building a wall, having infrastructure spending, padding the defense budget, and new defense spending. He has to make cuts somewhere. Any policy goals have a mathematical reality, and you see that with what's happening right now. Some agencies need to be treated with a scalpel, and then there's other agencies that need to be treated with a sledgehammer. And I think the president-elect is taking the right approach by starting this process on day one.
Capri, you agree with that? You say, of course, we should cut spending. You actually have an idea for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of things that could be done. I mean, for example, attrition for those that are heading into retirement. When you're dealing as well with applying business model for efficiency like Six Sigma or Kaizen. So you're looking for ways to actually improve the efficiency rather than just laying people off, finding ways to ease them out from, basically the legacy costs, through retirement, and then ultimately trying to employ some of the private sector models, to the public sector, to create efficiencies, which I think might be a way to get things moving in the right direction when it comes to our administrative agencies.
Well, cutting some spending, Joe, that's just one of the ideas he has to drain the swamp, as he's been talking about for months now. Question is, how much of that can actually get done, and how much of the reality when he gets into this job is, other presidents have tried this before. There's a reason it hasn't happened.
Well, other presidents have tried spending freezes. Very few have actually tried making significant cuts like that. But I think it's critical. Look, you take an agency like the Department of Education with an $80 billion budget, very limited jurisdictional ability, and very little to show for what they spend. I think even the new incoming Secretary of Education is happy that the agency is going to be making cuts. I forget which independent watchdog it was, but they said there was only 250 necessary employees in an agency that employs almost 1,000. So
you're going to have to fight with contract negotiations. That's going to be a big deal. Contract negotiations that are currently in place.
Certainly is, but this is why we elected Donald Trump. Look, if you're one of those people who doesn't think Donald Trump was elected to shake things up, then you're someone out there who hasn't been paying attention to the news in the last 18 months. So this is what people elected Trump for. We're happy when he questioned things like the ridiculous spending on Air Force One, the F-35 program. We're happy that someone's finally taking a look at these things.
Which he's already proven he can do. Capri, just quickly
That's right.
if he can get this done, if he can fix some of the waste in Washington, is this something that Democrats can get on board and support?
I certainly hope so. I think that there will be some difficult hurdles, though, particularly when it comes to the public sector unions and the contract negotiations that I mentioned. But let's all hope that in some way, shape, or form, we're going to be able to find a way to improve efficiencies and make government work for the taxpayers.
Yes, we should all want to happen. Joe, Capri, good to have you here this morning.
Thanks
so much. Have a good day.
Everyone watching Obamacare on that front as well. Well, wet weather could wash out nearly 1 million